Right, great. Let's start. So, morning and welcome, everyone. Thank you for taking this time today to join this webinar between Syrex and Redstor. By means of introduction, I am Heidi Colleen. I'm Head of Sales for Africa at Redstor. And with me, we've got Sudesh Pillay, Sales Director at Syrex, and Rian Bhaskar, which is Solutions Architect at Redstor. We have this session scheduled for about 45 minutes. I should keep you guys busy for approximately 25 minutes, might be a bit quicker, whereby we are just going to go straight into a product demonstration around Microsoft 365 data protection, what the back end looks like, the capabilities for backup and restore functionalities. I must just say that we have done a pre-recording because we all know how bad demos can actually happen during a live demonstration or webinar. So I really do apologize if it looks a bit staged, but we definitely didn't want to keep you on the line in case we face any challenges during this webinar today. Just a quick overview, Syrex and Redstor have been in partnership for quite a few years, offering a 4-in-1 data management service for all our customers, really focusing in the areas of removing customers' data management challenges, eliminating risks associated to data loss, and most importantly, also see where we are able to save cost in certain aspects of the business, as well as ensure that all compliance factors are being met. So that being said, I'm just going to do a quick handover before we start with the webinar to Sudesh for an introduction, and then we'll start.
Fantastic. Thank you, Heidi. Morning, everyone, and thank you very much for joining us this morning. I think this is going to be a great informative session. I think from our side, Syrex, over the last couple of years, we've been advocating for a multi-layered approach to data management and backups. Some of the areas where we've seen our engagements with clients going is that a lot of companies and a lot of organizations struggle to actually know where their data is, how it's stored, and how it's backed up. And this becomes a problem in any kind of environment compromise or zero-day attacks, as we've seen in the last couple of years, where we're sort of rushing to see put in a resilience plan or find out how we're going to mitigate risks and then bring data back into a live state. For purposes of today's discussion, we are focusing on Microsoft 365. And I'm sure you would agree with me that there's been a massive uptake in Office 365 and Microsoft 365 lately, especially since going into lockdown on the 27th of March. I think Microsoft Teams has seen, I think I saw the figure, 274% uptake in the last couple of months of customers moving to Office 365. And I think with that comes a perception that's in the market that Microsoft offers data resilience as a primary function, which is not always the case. And yes, there are some data protection strategies that they have built into the product. However, we feel the need to sort of communicate to clients exactly how that data resilience functions and exactly what functionality is open to them. But our purpose of this discussion really today is to show you or to help you understand the risks there are with your data and how to better mitigate those risks as business leaders and data managers. So without further ado, I'm going to hand back to Heidi to take us through the presentation, followed by a demo by Rian. Thanks, guys. Enjoy.
Great, thank you for that, Sudesh. During the webinar, if you guys have any questions, there is a FAQ box or raise your hand. Please, if there's something that comes to mind and you would like to ask that as a question at the end of the session, please just populate all your questions into the box and we will answer them for you when we get to the 15 minutes the question stage. Just in terms of connectivity, if you guys do not mind, I am going to switch off my video as we're going to start this webinar, just to ensure that the quality that you guys are going to receive from me is going to be perfect. So I do apologize for that, but unfortunately that's what we need to do working from home nowadays. Great, so we can carry on. So as we're about to kick off, like Sudesh mentioned, I think the best place to start would be asking the question, does Microsoft offer comprehensive data protection for applications on 365, especially the core applications such as email, SharePoint, OneDrive, as well as Teams? So during this webinar, we will focus purely on data protection for these applications, and we will cover some of the frequently asked questions, which is also when you registered for this webinar. 3 questions is there a need to protect my data within 365? How do we protect our data residing on the platform? And what is the benefit of managing your entire data estate from a single pane of glass? So as you all know, Microsoft really adds intricate value with assisting organizations to migrate data to the cloud securely. And we, both Syrex and Redstor, as Microsoft's strategic partners, we deliver an additional layer of security, data management, and protection for all Microsoft users. This is not just related to Microsoft 365 that we're discussing today, but that goes a step further to data protection on Azure as well. But please note, we will not cover the Azure component during this webinar, although if that is a question that you have towards the end, please type it in the message box and we will address that for you. So our aim is really just to provide data management and protection for all Microsoft users, guaranteeing business continuity and uptime. So I'm really hoping and trusting that you would take something away from this session today and have a better understanding of why it is important to use third-party tools and organizations. So I'm just going to go straight into the next slide, is why protect your data residing on Microsoft 365? So this is kind of a bold statement, but we have seen that it is on Microsoft Services Agreements under Section 6 of their EULA, where they recommend, in quote, that they recommend organizations are using third-party applications and services to protect their data that's being stored on their cloud. So what Syrex and Redstor offers a robust and dependable option in line with this statement, and I will get down to that offering as we go through the presentation today. Sudesh also mentioned it, and it's really a very interesting statistic that I would also like to share with you today, is that prior to the COVID-19 outbreak, the number of Microsoft seats reached about 190 million users globally. And in the past few months, we've seen that capacity, like Sudesh said, risen over 270%. But the most interesting fact on that is that Microsoft's own figures mentions that 80% of the users do not have a third-party data protection service in place. Now, that is a lot of data that is currently not being protected, especially with organizations moving to cloud. Everyone is being cloud appropriate, adopting cloud methodologies of doing work. So we've definitely seen a massive increase on that. We have also seen that Office 365 user accounts are increasingly vulnerable to malware attacks and prone to accidental deletion. We, as a data management organization, unfortunately face those facts on a daily basis. Data loss can disrupt business activity, as we all know, resulting in breach of certain regulations, GDPR and POPI, that is coming into full play or has been regulated since last week. And data loss can also result in reputational damage, which can be very difficult to rectify. So the next topic that I would really like to focus on is who is responsible for data protection residing on the 365 platform. So this diagram really illustrates for us that Microsoft 365 does not specialize in data backup and recovery. On the Azure platform, that is slightly different because Microsoft's got native support of their own Azure backup. Like I said, if you've got questions around that, be happy to cover that for you. But specifically for 365, they do not offer backup and recovery. Ultimately, the users and organizations are responsible for these activities in order to keep your data safe that is residing on the Microsoft cloud. So maybe if I can just illustrate this to you, As you can see, it is the responsibilities between Microsoft and the user. On the blue-greeny side, you would be able to see that Microsoft offers comprehensive data protection or infrastructure uptime protection regards to their network, their hardware, virtualization services that you might make use of, the operating systems and applications that they supply on the platform. They would be able to also guarantee an additional layer of security and uptime in case a disaster strikes with hardware failure, software failure, even power outages, and as bad as natural disasters. So there, Microsoft definitely gives you 100% commitment and guarantee that with regards to your infrastructure and failures, that they would be able to provide that service back to you. However, unfortunately, on the other side, in terms of the data and the user's information, it is up to organizations to protect the data. We are responsible to protect data in case of human error. Sometimes files are being deleted, external hackers, viruses, and malware, which is also a point that we will cover in the upcoming slides on how we can manage or support you guys with potential ransom attacks in the future. So retention policies, a lot of organizations out there would say comprehensive cover, Microsoft offers cover for me. I don't have to worry. Their retention policies, they've got a recycle bin, and that really meets all my business requirements. If that is the case, that is good. But I just want to highlight a couple of retention policies that's outlined in the Microsoft agreements, which is really, really important to note. So applications such as OneDrive and SharePoint powers a lot of the capabilities that we use within 365. However, that can be at risk if you face, again, I keep on saying it because we work with data on a daily basis, it can be at risk when you face user error, possible hackings, there might be syncing issues, or malicious insiders causing data loss in your environment. Both of these applications, OneDrive and SharePoint, leverage off a primary and a secondary recycle bin, which only provides you with a retention period of 93 days. But that can also be emptied at any time, which means at that point the data is lost. If you have not kept an online copy on your notebook or on your file server, and you have made use of the functionality that's available storing all the data in OneDrive, you've accidentally deleted a folder structure, it will go to the recycle bin for 93 days. But if someone accidentally cleans the recycle bin, your data is permanently gone, which is a major, major risk and a concern. Microsoft's also recently released a restore feature for OneDrive that enables users to roll back to all their files in a previous point in time. Again, only within a period of 30 days, which provides major limitations. Most importantly, on that point of the 30 days, it adds no new protection. Again, if data is going to be deleted, it cannot be restored. So everyone makes use, or a majority of the organizations are making use of Mimecast for data, for mail protection within 365. We offer an additional layer of security. So I just wanted to maybe just give a quick explanation on Exchange and their responsibilities. By default, deleted emails will go into a deleted item folder. Once they are removed from that folder, or if a customer has permanently deleted any Exchange items, they are being sent to a secondary recovery item folder. And that folder has got a retention timeline of 14 days as a default retention. And as far as we know, that can also be extended up to 30 days. While that might sound like a good answer to all your backup and retention hope and dreams, just consider this for a second. There's 3 points that I want to discuss with you now. Retention policies and capabilities varies from service to service within 365. And new services like Microsoft Teams often don't have the similar safeguards available. The second point is policies are always evolving and tend to become very complicated. If you as an organization or your IT administration team don't constantly monitor your organization's data and investing time to understand the complex landscape, it is easy for things like critical data being stored in the cloud to fall through the cracks. The very last point I want to discuss is on 365 backup and retention policies can only protect your data loss in a limited scenario and will and cannot take place of a third-party data backup solution. We'll move on to the next slide. So what implications does that have? I'm not going to read everything on the screen for you guys. You can definitely have a look at it. But as you can see, that majority of the business applications that we use is all Office applications, PowerPoint, Outlook, Word, PDF, and etc. So what does that really mean for us, or what does that mean for you as an organization? What is the knock-on effect? Well, with more data that's being placed in the Microsoft Cloud, as you guys can see from this graph here, there is no obligation once again from Microsoft to back it up for you. All this data is responsible for users and organizations to protect. So if you can just think for a while using OneDrive and SharePoint, Teams, sharing files and documents with your colleagues, what data is also being stored on OneDrive, what is being sent between various cloud platforms, and also what kind of and type of data that's business critical for organizations are being held on laptops itself. Unfortunately, a lot of users have not fully used Microsoft 365 and they're not always familiar with the policies to remain the integrity of their data. So even though Microsoft occupies the top spot of cloud storage rankings, which we've seen in news and in global rankings, stats still shows that 58.4% of the data stored in the cloud is stored on Office documents. Again, just back to this illustration right here. And some of the data remains unprotected. So Microsoft does take security of their platform very, very seriously. And they have also made significant investments in the service level security. And these investments protect the Microsoft cloud-based applications from any intrusions. That just goes back to the previous slide that I've showed you guys in terms of responsibilities. However, users can still perform high-risk actions, whether their behavior is accidental or it might even be malicious, unfortunately, though we've seen in some cases. And moreover, account details can be obtained by phishing scams to gain access to your corporate data. The only way to mitigate human error, again, is by bootstrapping it with a complete data protection tool. Moving along, we're going to give you guys just really a brief overview of 7 reasons why Redstor and Syrex, thinking about all the organizations that we deal with globally, why is it important to protect your data on 365? So basic question that we always ask is, how secure is your data? Your infrastructure is secure, your data is secure with limitations using the 365 cloud. So organizations might sometimes be vulnerable if data has been deleted a while ago, like we've discussed with the retention periods, but I would just like to go into 7 brief details why it is important to have data protection. Avoid dependencies. We all are familiar with the analogy of having all your eggs in one basket. That can pose a number of risks to your organization and production environment. And I keep on saying this, but it's really important to reiterate. By having a third-party data protection tool, you would have 2 copies of your data outside of the Microsoft realm for future migration projects. If you would like to move data from Microsoft 365 to Azure, you would like to move it back to a data center hosted by Syrex, or even move it back on-premise. A third-party tool would be able to help you with those migrations to avoid egress charges and moving data out of the Microsoft 365 cloud. And we would be able to provide you with a fully fledged recovery plan and business continuity plan. We give you the ability to set your own retention policies. As mentioned at the outset of the webinar, 365 is not a backup solution. They retain data for certain periods of time, but we can help you to minimize risks that is associated to data loss, especially if the data has fallen out of the retention period of your data retention requirement, and if your data has been permanently deleted. We give you the ability to retain your data by default of this month and last month, which is the current setting. And we can go beyond and beyond that. Retaining data for you in order for you to be compliant ranges between 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, 10 years. We've even got a couple of organizations whereby we retain data for them indefinitely. The most important part of data retention is that we do not charge for long-term retention. So with Microsoft, there might be additional features and functionality in the foreseeable future, but the longer you're going to retain data on their platform, your cost is going to increase substantially. With Redstor and Syrex, we bill for front-end data, whatever is used on your platform, and we retain it for as long as you desire. So how do we address compliance issues? In order to meet compliance regulations, a third-party data protection tool will give you the ability to restore data in case of a user or IT administrator if they have deleted a user or any users from Active Directory, again, whether that was intentional or otherwise. As you can see from this slide, is in often cases, auditing firms, legal, financial firms, if they have to go to a court of law to state a certain case and there's legal action, you would definitely need to go back. You need to be compliant to retain data for longer for that business case, and we would be able to assist you by retaining the data. How do you recover everything in an event of a deletion? We all know that users can sometimes accidentally delete data or overwrite files, as mentioned before. Microsoft 365 provides limited retention capabilities, but even more so, what we've seen is in case of a complete disaster and you need to do a full recovery, there's a lot of limitations in terms of bandwidth throttling. How long is it going to take for you to just restore business critical data for your production environment to be up and running as soon as possible? And what impact will that have on your business if your production will have to come to an end? Users can't access information. So with Syrex and Redstor, I will take you guys briefly through the complete solution offering in a few minutes, but we give you the ability to recover your entire data estate within minutes in case of a disaster and a complete deletion. So prevent downtime. What we always like to ask organizations is, what is your desired recovery time objective? Will you be able to meet your business requirements if a disaster had to strike and you need to recover from the cloud? Again, Syrex and Redstor will be able to assist you guys in a case of a DR. We have local support 24/7, 365 days a year, whereby we provide world-class service to guarantee uptime for all Microsoft users. And this is not just whether you make use of Microsoft Cloud. This is for data residing in Azure, in AWS, on-premise, or in various data centers across the country, without any delays, or again, like I've mentioned on the previous slides, with internet throttling in a state of disaster. So how do we protect against ransomware? So regular backups will ensure that you do have separate copies of your data that is uninfected and that you can recover data quickly in an instance after the attack. What we also provide as an additional service, because we offer a complete managed service, our engineers would be able to pick up drastic selection changes in your backup environment. We will make contact with you as soon as we run the backup reports between 7 and 9 o'clock in the morning. We will be able to establish that either you have been hit by ransomware because your data that's selected for backup has increased quite significantly in size, your data is encrypted, or we'll just verify if the IT administrator have actually made more data selections to ensure that all data is being protected. So there's lots of ways that we can assist organizations once they have been impugned to not pay the fines, but to make use of the retention retention that we have available on the platform in case of that attack. Then lastly is separate roles as a security standard. Having your backup platform in exactly the same environment as your production platform allows for a single point of failure. We all know that Microsoft distributes certain workloads between various data centers to provide that continuity, but that is not always visible to you as a user and organization. You won't always know if your production data and your backup data resides in the same data center. So that is a bit of a concern. What we want to do is really provide you with redundancy, that you have got your data residing in the cloud, to offsite locations in the Terraco data centers, which will give you the peace of mind that you have met all security standards in terms of data protection. So that was just the part that I wanted to cover based on Microsoft 365. What I would like to go into now in a bit more detail is the 4-in-1 data management service offering. And this includes the cloud-to-cloud backup solutions for 365 and G Suites. In essence, Redstor and Syrex, we are in the business of helping organizations to discover, manage, and protect their data. The 4-in-1 data management component is purely based on backup and recovery, DR enablement, data archiving, and search and insights. I will explain this search and insight to you guys on the next slide. But in essence, this is all based on the infrastructure side as well as cloud to cloud. Regardless of where your data resides, again, whether it's in AWS, Azure, on-premise, Redstor cloud, hybrid cloud, using various other data centers, we are able to help you discover what data do you have, what is business critical and important for your organization, when last it's been accessed, by whom it's been accessed, so that we can manage your data backup component for you effectively, and we can protect your data. So what we've also done is really look at the backup and recovery component we can do very well. We can do it the traditional method, whereby it is file and folder selection, or full system backup, which will give you the ability, in case of a disaster, to restore your data in a bootable image in a VMBK, VHD, or VHDX formats. So the DR enablement tool is what we've seen as organizations are looking for proper business continuity and disaster recovery plans. Often enough, they can't really afford the service. And it is that they can't have hot sites, they can't have high availability of live replication. So what we've done with the DR tool is to enable organizations to have immediate access to their backed up data if a disaster strike. So what that means is stream your data on demand. If you can think for a second, YouTube or the Netflix of data, when you look at a YouTube video and you know exactly where you want to go, maybe to show your children, this is exactly the dance move that I like, you can take your cursor, you can drag and drop it to that specific point, and YouTube will start playing as of that point. That is what we do with DR enablement. We give immediate access to data, to backed up data to users. As they start accessing the information, that portion of the data will be made available immediately whilst the technology is streaming the rest of the data for full recovery on the back end. Furthermore to that, data archiving is very different to the traditional method of archiving that we offer. Archiving for Redstor and Syrex is specifically to free up tier 1 storage in a customer's environment. Once we've got 2 copies of your data hosted in the Terraco data centers, we're able to replace your files and folders with a stub file, which is essentially an empty shell. Your users will still have the exact same experience. They would be able to see their content or the files on their structures. However, those files will be empty. So we have seen up to about 60 to 70% savings on front-end storage on customers' environments using the archiving tool. You would ask, how would I recover my data? Or if a user wants to access a file, we will use the instant data functionality to recover the files to make it available to that user immediately. The second point that I want to discuss is that you would be able to manage everything in your entire environment across multiple cloud platforms, on-premise data, data residing in G Suite 365, or even on user endpoints. You would be able to manage from a single pane of glass. The storage platform console and web console is a multi-tenanted platform that would give you access to your entire backup estate. IT administrators would be able to relook data selections, schedule reportings, ensure that backups are running successfully, as well as perform restores where necessary. And this is really just a very good illustration of what that would look like. It would give you an indication of all the amount of service that you have protected with Syrex, the data that is stored on the back end, when last, what is your last backup status, how many restores you've performed on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis. So data insights is a very, very interesting tool. Data insights would give you a lot of information into your backup environment. Specifically, if we look at, are you being compliant? Have you eliminated all risk factors related to data loss in your environment? This graph really illustrates exactly the information that we can provide back to organizations. That in the blue part over here, you would be able to see that only 10.5 terabytes of data is currently being collected for backup. However, the pink portion really illustrates that 25.4 terabytes of your data is not being protected. Furthermore, Insights would be able to give you information on the not selected data for backup. When last were those documents accessed? So it's not really business critical, so that doesn't have to form part of the data selections, or actually this data in the pink area has been accessed on a daily basis. Your organization might run at risk of potential data loss. On the right-hand side here, you would be able to set different kind of thresholds for data access, potentially in the last 7 days, 14 days, or even in the last 3 months. In this specific customer environment, it shows that 70% of the data has last been accessed in 3 months. That gives us the ability to select the data for backup, archive it off, and free up about 25 terabytes of space on your front-end storage in your environment that your organization can use for anything else. So that is really it from my side. I really do want to thank you for your time today. I am going to hand over to Rian. Like I said, we've done a pre-recording of the demo. If it is a bit clunky, I do apologize. But Rian, I am going to put myself on mute. I know that there's a voiceover as well, but feel free to jump in where necessary with an explanation of the 365 product demo. So I'll start that for us now.
everyone, my name is Bhaskar. I am a solutions architect and pre-sales consultant for Redstor. Welcome to this 365 introduction. Before we delve into the 365 portion of my presentation, I just want to quickly give you an overview of what the control center looks like and what borderless visibility of your data really looks like using Redstor. With Redstor, you have single views of all your information, and that is across Windows, Linux, and Mac desktops and laptops, as well as servers, as well as your 365 environment. This really allows us to have a unified view of everything happening in our environment and gives us borderless visibility into our infrastructure. Setting up backups for 365 is the same across OneDrive, SharePoint, Exchange, and Teams. Once you've selected the product that you want to backup, you'll be prompted to enter your administrator credentials. This is the credential you'll use to authenticate your 365 environment. If you had multi-factor authentication enabled, you would also be prompted for that. Once I've granted the Redstor application backend access to my 365 tenant, I'll then be able to do some basic setup for my backups. In Exchange, we backup mail, contacts, and calendar. From an account selection perspective, I can either select a single account, a single department, or all the accounts in my organization. If all accounts are selected, all new accounts will be selected by default as well. I can then start a backup. My backup schedule can be changed as well, or advanced backup settings can also be done. Recoveries on 365 Exchange are very simple. Again, I can recover mail, contacts, or calendars. Once I've selected the user that I want to do the recovery for, I can either do a full mailbox recovery by simply clicking recover, or I can delve a little bit deeper and view the single items, individual folders inside the user's mailbox. As you can see, each one of the recovery points is a backup snapshot taken, and I can now browse through the user's mailbox, contacts, or calendars and find either the folder, all of the folders, or the single item that I want to recover. I'm going to restore the entire inbox. Every restore will require a user to authenticate to 365. And this will then queue this mailbox for recovery. It's important to note that any Redstor recovery is not going to overwrite any data in your current mailbox. It would rather append data by adding a new folder to your mailbox. Once the restore completes, you'll see a new folder is created in your Outlook called Redstor Restores. This folder will contain the restored data and will allow you to drag and drop the restored items. Once you're done, you can simply delete the folder. In SharePoint and OneDrive, you're able to recover back to SharePoint or recover using Instant Data. Instant Data will restore your data back on-premise to a server or workstation of your choice. When recovering back to SharePoint, you can select the site that you want to restore, or select all your sites, depending on what your requirement is. Once you've clicked recover, you'll be asked whether you want to restore back to the original location or whether you want to recover to a new location. Recovering to a new location will create a new SharePoint site containing your data. As always, we need to authenticate to Microsoft in order to do this restore. The second method of recovery for SharePoint is using instant data. Redstor's instant data will allow you to recover back on premises without the need to run SharePoint infrastructure in Office 365. You'll be asked how long you want this information to be available. We'll then simply choose which sites we want to recover. I'm just going to recover all sites. Again, authentication to 365 will be required. I'm now able to select the site that I want to actually restore back on premise. I'm going to use my default site. In this case, I'm going to use temporary file access. The difference between temporary file access and permanent file recovery is that a permanent file recovery will automatically download all information. Temporary file access will mount a drive to your machine where you can actually access all of the information inside your SharePoint site. Recoveries for Microsoft Teams are very similar to SharePoint or OneDrive recoveries in that they can be recovered on-premise for files, and they can also be recovered back into the infrastructure at 365. The one key difference in Teams is that we're also able to restore chat history from our backup selection. That concludes our introduction to 365 backup using Redstor.
Fabulous, Rian. Thank you. Thank you so much for that. I don't want to see that video again, and for some reason I can't get to the Q&A page. Let's just try. There you go. Okay, so thank you everyone for taking the time once again to join us for this webinar. We are going to open the floor for a couple of questions. If we don't get to your questions, like I mentioned, please reach out to your Syrex account manager and we will definitely get back to you as soon as possible. But please do ask some questions on this forum.
Okay, Heidi, we've got a question here. It says,
Sure.
What is the maximum number of times a day that you can back up your Microsoft 365?
Okay, Rian, would you mind answering that question for us? So from an infrastructure perspective, you can set multiple backup sets or backup points on a daily basis. So that's really to reduce your RPO. So that's available from an infrastructure perspective. Rian, what can you do on Microsoft?
On Microsoft, currently we have daily automated backup, so that's one backup a day. We are looking at multiple backups daily in future releases. Currently, it's one backup per job daily.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, and then another question. How does the use of Mimecast offset the need for backing up your Microsoft 365 accounts?
Heidi, shall I take that one as well?
You can take it.
Okay, great stuff. So there is a recovery portion to Mimecast that's specific to Exchange. What Mimecast does not cover is obviously your OneDrive, your SharePoint, Microsoft Teams, as well as the data covered inside those various containers in 365. Obviously, that's also got a lot of mail, but again, the rest of the containers in your 365 tenant is not protected using Mimecast.
Thank you.
Right, we've got one more. Does Redstor backup emails in the deleted items folder in Exchange?
Yes, we do. We back up the archive as well as deleted items folders in your Exchange mailbox.
Right. And one last one I see here. Can I only recover OneDrive and SharePoint data back into the cloud? I think you did cover that, though.
Yeah, so the difference between OneDrive and SharePoint and Exchange is that the data from OneDrive and SharePoint can be recovered back on premise. Exchange specifically can only be recovered back into Exchange. That's the big difference in the product.
Right. Okay, one last one. Can we use Redstor's Microsoft 365 protection to migrate data? I guess that's another one for Rian.
That would depend on your migration strategy and what you're migrating to. Primarily at the moment for Microsoft 365, migration would be from SharePoint back on premise. That would be your use case. However, when we're looking at the infrastructure solution, that would be migration of infrastructure as a service from on-premise into Azure. That's very possible using the Redstor solution.
Okay.
Is that
Any
it? No more questions?
Yeah, that's it. Hold
Okay.
on. Just
What,
double
one more?
check. Oh, sorry, there's one last one that just popped in. I think we'll take the last one for this session. If your data resides on Proxmo's infrastructure in the cloud, does the Redstor full system recovery allow direct system restore into Hyper-V platform?
Great. That's a great question. So we are agnostic of the platform. Obviously, you'd require access to the hypervisor itself to do the restore. But yes, in essence, we can restore to Hyper-V, VMware. We can restore into AWS as well as Microsoft Azure directly.
Oh, brilliant. That's it for questions.
Thanks, Celeste. Thank you, Ron. I'm just going to hand over to Sudesh once again to close off the session for us today.
Fantastic, guys. Thank you so much, Heidi. Thank you, Rian. I think the session, everyone would agree that the session was great and was informative. I think from a follow-up perspective, our sales team will be following up with all attendees involved here today, just providing you with some supplementary and supportive information. And if there are any further questions, please do get in touch with us and we can address it. Happy to set up individual engagements with each and every one of you to take the conversation further. Look forward to seeing you guys at the next one.
Great. Thank you, Sudesh. And once again, thank you for everyone for joining us today. We appreciate your time.
Thanks all.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys.